Hey, what's up? Yesterday's attack in Berlin isn't just another headline. It's another tragedy that's forcing Europe and, frankly, the rest of the Western world to confront questions that too many people have been afraid to ask. Authorities say a man allegedly motivated by Islamic extremism drove a vehicle into a pride parade, killing at least one person and injuring dozens more. If the investigation confirms those allegations, this won't be an isolated incident. It becomes part of a much larger pattern that has played out across Europe over the last decade. But here's the question that almost nobody wants to discuss honestly. How did we get to a point where some of the loudest voices advocating for LGBTQ rights also find themselves politically aligned with movements that include people who fundamentally reject those rights? That's not a rhetorical question. It's one worth examining. Today, we're going to watch a clip of a panel discussing this contradiction. They raise a point that deserves serious attention, not because it's politically convenient, but because reality doesn't care about your political tribes. It's also important to say before we get started that Islamic extremism is, without a doubt, one of the most touchy subjects that we have in our country. Groups like ISIS, Al Qaeda, and others have openly declared hatred towards LGBTQ people, religious minorities, and anyone who rejects their ideology. However, you see constantly the left-leaning liberals and the pride trans community supporting Palestine and the Islamic movement. But I think this conversation isn't really about left or right. It's about whether people are willing to confront uncomfortable realities, even when those realities collide with the political narratives they become so attached to. Let's watch, and then we'll discuss afterwards.
We are back with a Fox News alert. Police have now killed the suspect who allegedly drove a car through a pride parade yesterday in Berlin in what authorities say was an Islamic terror attack. 21-year-old Abdul Balut is accused of killing at least one and injuring 29 others. Authorities say he has Lebanese roots and is allegedly tied to the country's, quote, Islamist scene. The suspect had previously been investigated for planning a terror attack and faced legal trouble in both Lebanon and Germany. Jason, this is not the first car attack that we have seen in Germany. You know, where do the authorities go from here?
Look, it's so sad because there are families that are grieving lost loved ones. I mean, just the sheer terror, it did what it was intended to do, which is create terror. But if people that believe in the Pride movement, whether they're and people that are Christians, people that are Jewish, people that believe in anything other than Islam, think that some of these Islamists will live in unison with others, there's a lot of them that won't. And there's a lesson to be learned there. And you got to be really careful here because there is an aggressive nature. It's not everybody, okay? I don't want to be, taking a sweeping generality to everybody, but this routinely happens time and time again. It's almost comical to me that somebody who believes in the Pride movement also believes in the Islamist movement because they're just not compatible. They're just not.
Yeah. And Tommy, this is not the first time it's happened in Europe either, and European politicians are dealing with it, and it's created a political environment there that those maybe 10 years ago thought would never exist in Germany again.
Yeah, we can learn a lot from the failed policies of Europe, and hopefully we are at this point. Suicidal empathy can ruin an entire continent in that case, and it can ruin a lot here, and we're already seeing that as well. This has also happened here. Remember Pulse nightclub? That is very real. And to Jason's point, we were talking about this off camera, but some of these folks at these universities who are marching with signs that say Queers for Palestine, they have this ridiculous delusional belief that somehow they can reach out to an Islamist, and it's like, to your point off camera, it's like you can go pet the bison and it won't gore you. No, it will. And this delusional idea that you have that somehow you can coexist with people who don't think you have a right to exist is ridiculous. But there are so many in this country and certainly in Europe who firmly believe that. And how many times does something like this have to happen before you wake up and realize that maybe you can't coexist with people who want to kill you? There's just a thought there.
If you want to be more like Europe, they believe in a globalist society without borders and no vetting, and they just somehow believe that everyone will assimilate and it'll be perfect and we're all going to sing Kumbaya together. And time after time after time again in Europe, we've learned that that does not happen. And so you can't have a country without borders and without vetting people, but we just heard the DSA candidate said they want to abolish ICE and borders and they want free reign for everyone to come in. And unfortunately, that's what you get.
I think the panel raises a legitimate question, but I also think that there's an even bigger discussion hiding underneath it. The real issue isn't simply whether some progressive activists and Islamic movements are incompatible beliefs. That's really easy to demonstrate. The harder question is why these alliances or coalitions sometimes exist in the first place. In Western democracies, political coalitions often form around shared short-term goals rather than shared worldviews. People can agree on one issue while disagreeing profoundly on another. That's nothing new. But when those disagreements involve fundamental human rights, it's worth asking whether people have fully considered the consequences. Many Islamic extremist organizations and in some countries, legal systems influenced by strict interpretations of Sharia law have very harsh penalties for same-sex relationships, including death. Human rights organizations have documented imprisonment, corporal punishment, and in a handful of cases and countries, the death penalty for consensual same-sex conduct under certain interpretations of Islamic law. This is not a joke. Those are the facts. They aren't just talking points. That's why this conversation matters. If someone advocates for the LGBTQ rights, it's reasonable to ask whether they've examined the stated beliefs of the group they're standing beside. Supporting one cause doesn't automatically mean endorsing every belief held by everyone in the coalition. But it does mean people should understand who they're aligning with and where those differences become impossible to ignore. Europe has spent years wrestling with questions about immigration, integration, and assimilation. Some communities integrate successfully, others struggle. Some immigrants embrace liberal democratic values, others bring social or religious beliefs that are fundamentally at odds with those values. We should be able to condemn Islamist extremists just as strongly as we condemn white supremacists, neo-Nazis, political violence, or any ideology that seeks to strip people of their basic rights. The Berlin attack, if investigators continue to conclude it was motivated by Islamic extremism, reminds us that violent ideologies don't disappear simply because we avoid talking about them. Ignoring difficult questions doesn't make society safer. Honest debate does. Democracies are strongest when people with very different opinions can argue openly, protect each other's rights, and reject political violence regardless of who commits it. Ultimately, the lesson shouldn't be that one group of people deserves fewer rights than another. The lesson is that freedom only survives when it's defended consistently. If we defend free speech only for people we like, it isn't really free speech. If we defend religious liberty only for religions we agree with, it isn't really religious liberty. But is Islam actually a religion, or is it much more than just that? If we defend equal rights only when they are politically convenient, they aren't really equal rights. But at some point, we must stand up and protect our country and recognize evil when we see it. That's really the biggest issue with stories like this. Not that it just happened in Berlin, but whether Western democracies still have the confidence to defend the values that allowed people of different religions, backgrounds, and identities to live together peacefully in the first place. Because make no mistake about it, Islam does not accept different ideologies. You will be Muslim or you will die by the sword. These are very difficult conversations, but we must, if we want to remain a country, have these. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this video, please share it, subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Hey, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Peace.